the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Toohill,
Yes.
Esti,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Here.
Anderson,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ham.
Yes. Great. Paul will not be here tonight. Council, are there any agenda changes? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the February 27th, 2023 council meeting. Approval of the March 3rd, 2023 payroll in the amount of $224,834.96. Approval of the March 6th, 2023 special payroll in the amount of $1,141.06. Approval of the January finance report. Resolution authorizing funds transfers. Acceptance of the library board minutes. Acceptance of the water and sewer utility committee minutes. Acceptance of the beautification commission minutes. Acceptance of the volunteer committee minutes. Resolution of wage increases in the police department. Resolution of employment in the street department. Resolution of employment of communication specialists. Approval of ACH payment to Department of Revenue in the amount of $1,810.85. Approval of liquor license for Walmart store number 985, Verizon Wine LLC, additional location at 406 North 2nd, and Quality Quick Stop. Approval of total claims in the amount of $315,119.44. We did have one claim to Alliant Energy over $75,000 in the amount of $88,604.87.
I move that we approve the consent agenda unless you have something, Doug, that we need.
I have some comments to make, but I don't have any objections.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion?
Okay, so I reviewed all the claims, and I recommend approving those. I do want to make a couple comments about the law enforcement assessment that is
Okay.
a resolution we're approving here.
Yep.
So we did, Ways and Means did vote to recommend that we approve the wage changes for the law enforcement individuals. And I guess Safety and Transportation will approve the structural change at some point. You don't have to do it now, but we just did the wage changes here. So there will be 6 steps for officers. So now normally at their anniversary date of hiring, they would get a salary change. Plus they would get a COLA, cost of living allowance, every July when the rest of the city gets it. So what this resolution is proposing is that we do the salary adjustments that are recommended in the study that we commissioned. We begin those in April of this year, so it'll be 3 months early, current fiscal year. And in lieu of a COLA adjustment in July, which would be 6% for all the other employees. So the police department would not get the COLA, they'd get their adjustments now in April 1. And then, instead of waiting for the anniversary date of each officer to move up on the step, we'll have all the officers move up one step on July 1 of 23, and then every year thereafter they would be moved up a step. So the only complication there would be officers who are getting moved up early. Someone might complain about that. Or if we were to hire someone between now and July 1, would that person be eligible for a move up or a step up on July 1? So the resolution to that, I think, is when we sign them on, that we clarify, and the council can discuss this in more detail later. So my recommendation would be if they are hired more than 6 months prior to July 1, they would be eligible for a step increase. And if it was less than 6 months, not a step increase. That's one possibility. Anyway, personnel maybe, or somebody can look at that and decide how they want to do it, or maybe Dave can make some recommendation. So Council, Ways and Means did recommend approving that wage adjustment for the police department.
May I ask why you're recommending the step up versus the cost of living adjustment?
That was the recommendation from the study, I guess.
Oh, I guess I'm looking at the report. Okay.
And also, I'm gonna just read a comment that Paul Gandy had. that he says that although I can't be at the meeting tonight, I've reviewed the final draft of the police department report. I'm satisfied that a compelling case has been made to adopt the increase in compensation, which the report recommends. I support it and would vote for the recommendation if present. So he just wanted me to communicate that he supports this, just so you know, even though he's not here to vote.
Oh, I should make the additional comment that the cost of the additional salaries between April 1 of '23 and June 30, '23, those 3 months, would be covered by the fact that we are short officers in our department by 5. And so it's already been budgeted for police salaries. We're just shifting the money from officers that we didn't hire to officers that are currently working for us.
Okay, so with that, any other comments?
I was just gonna ask Chief too, are you good with all this? Is there anything you recommend or?
Yes, sir. I received a call from Councilman Flournoy this afternoon, and we discussed it at length.
Okay,
So yes, I appreciate you checking, but we are definitely aware of the changes, sir.
okay, great.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? No, please call the roll.
Ham,
Yes?
Anderson,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Esti,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes,
Okay, so there's no public forum or appearances tonight, so we will move on to resolution, action items, and ordinances. And we have Brent with us here. So first action item is consideration of the engagement letter with Hinson Consulting. So, Brent, do you want to say anything first of all?
On this matter, I'd just be happy to take any questions. It's really just the structure I use for the engagement letter is essentially just specific to what was in the proposal.
Great.
So,
Thank you. So, council, any questions to Brent regarding this? Well, if not, I guess I'll take a motion to approve.
I was gonna say, I make a motion to approve this.
Okay.
second.
Moved by Rasmussen, second by Toohill. Any other questions? If not, please call the roll.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes,
Anderson.
Yes.
Ham,
Yes?
Esti.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Great. Then we will move on to consideration of city administrator job description, position, and profiles. So there's an action item, there's a memo there, and again, Brent, do you want to say anything about this particular thing?
yeah, absolutely. So, thanks to the committees for their work on updating the job description. That is contained within the position profile. Towards the end of what we've put together, we've ended up finding out that it's very useful because we often get requests for the job description. Whereas it's pretty easy to find city codes this day and age, sometimes it's harder to find the job description. So we always got that request, so we just include it right in the position profile. So thanks very much for getting that updated. We've also are showing this position profile with what we understand to be the recommended range from the committee for salary range, and be happy to take any questions on any of those items or on the position profile itself. And then kind of after we've kind of gotten through that, then we've got some additional things related to the search I'd like to discuss
Okay.
that are in the memo.
Great. Any questions, council?
Do we need to make that one adjustment on the minutes now, or you want to do that
Oh, we can do
later?
that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion to approve the job description and position profile.
Moved by Anderson,
Second.
second by Rasmussen. Any other discussion or questions? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Ham,
Yes?
Esti.
Yes.
Toohill,
yes,
Flournoy.
Yes.
I thought I would just, I should have said that previously, but just for the public's purpose, just so they have a little bit of a timeline, I'd like to let the public know that just in very short, that our deadline for application is proposed to be April 13th. And, of course, we'll be doing interviews and stuff like that, and hope to have somebody on board by the end of June. So we hope that all goes as planned. So go
Yep,
ahead,
and-
Rick.
And we'll do everything we can to make sure that it does go as planned.
All right. So go ahead with any comments that you have.
Okay, great. So thank you, council, very much for your consideration, both of the engagement letter and then of the position profile. As the schedule indicates, with your approval here tonight, we will start placing ads. I'll get those in the works tonight, and probably those will start appearing tomorrow. I'd also encourage, you guys have the final version of the position profile. I'd recommend putting that on your website in a conspicuous location. Doesn't hurt to do that as well. And then I've just got a few items to talk through here. Like I said, things outlined in the memo. So is it okay, Mayor, if I just proceed to that?
Yes,
those
please.
items? Okay, great. So the mayor kind of outlined the proposed schedule. The biggest things there for council for your schedules is that at this point we're planning on coming to meet with you in person on April 17th, and that will be that's a regular, or no, that is not a regular meeting date because you guys are second and fourth, correct? Yeah, so we are planning to come on April 17th, so there need to be a special meeting posted for that meeting or for that day. And so we'll come and bring you a proposed list of candidates to consider. We see an important part of our role to help you kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, bring you the qualified candidates to take a look at. If we have candidates that we know maybe technically they're qualified, but they have tremendous red flags that we're aware of, we will not bring those forward. We feel that, again, that's an important part of our screening process, and we're trying to put you in a position to make the best hire possible for Fairfield. So we're just going to bring you recommended candidates. And then on the 19th, then we turn around. Basically, we've had this process in place for numerous searches. We'll meet on the 17th. Council will say, here's the candidates we want to invite for virtual interviews. And then we will turn around that night and contact them all. We've let them know in advance and gotten their closed session sign off for both the 17th and the 19th. If they're being considered. And then so we turn around on the 19th in the afternoon/evening and conduct virtual interviews via Zoom. And so we have I think a very good process for that, very useful, enlightening, hopefully, to the council to kind of help you see these people, not necessarily in person, but see them at least via video conference, get a sense for kind of how the person matches the qualifications, and get an idea for who you think are the preferred candidates to invite for an in-person interview. We would then conduct the in-person interviews on May 5th and 6th. And so that's a Friday and a Saturday. And so the Friday evening, we like splitting it up this way because really it works best to then be able to have a public reception. It's kind of an important oversight. This is a position that certainly needs to be able to work well with the public. I think it's very good to have the public have a chance to meet them prior to any hiring decision being made. And so we like to do tours of the town and then public reception on Friday night, and then turn around and do interviews on Saturday. We'll do all of the background checks and reference checks, et cetera, in advance of that weekend so that the council is in a position, if you are ready at the end of those interviews to make a hire, you're in a position to be able to do that. So that's kind of what we're shooting for. I have given you just kind of a brief overview here. Subject to change, certainly we're we've adjusted this schedule in many different ways, just depending on the preferences of the city that we're serving, but have given you just kind of a standard overview of the schedule that we'd expect. We do recommend having various representatives outside of the council. Of course, this is a council decision. This is a council hire. You guys are the boss. That's our system of government. The council as a whole is the boss. But we think it's a very important hire to have a broad tent of partners involved, staff involved. And so we really recommend that with the different stages of things. And especially as we get to the in-person interviews, we recommend splitting the council into 3. That helps us avoid any issues with quorums and closed session minute taking, et cetera. And then we also find that really helps because you can put council staff and community partners on each panel. And we found those mixed panels really help for good discussions during the day, and it actually helps us come up with, we think, a better consensus building at the end of the day. Because ultimately everybody's had a chance to see them in different settings. We have seen cases in the past, and we've kind of refined this process over time, because we have seen cases in the past where if there was a council panel and a staff panel, that sometimes when that person interviewed with the council panel, they really knocked it out of the park, and then maybe they didn't do very well in the staff panel with some more specific questions staff has. And so we really like breaking it up. So then, you as the council can not only get the opinions of your staff, of your community partners, you can also get the opinions of your peers that might have seen them with a different set of questions, and potentially with some differences in their answers that are revealing. And so we do think that that's a very useful process. It's been very successful and very well received by the cities we've worked with. So that's kind of the overview of what we believe this looks like for interviews. There's plenty of time to make adjustments. We'll have over a month here, or a month until applications are due, and a little bit over a month until we'll be back to see you. So really be thinking about this between now and April 17th when we're there in person next, as far as what you would like to see, if anything different from what I've presented here. We're happy to talk through it and adjust this to something that'll work for Fairfield with kind of those caveats and observations that I've made here. So does that make sense, at least as an initial approach and schedule?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, questions?
Okay. Very, very good. Very good. Yeah. And please feel free. Like I said, we've adjusted it multiple different ways as needed. Okay. So if that sounds acceptable for this moment in time, really just kind of talk through here, kind of next steps here. Certainly next step will be to get the ads out and start really hitting the street with the profile, and we have been having some conversations and assembling lists of potential candidates that we're going to make reach outs to and really try to get them interested in this opening. We think you guys have a very good city. We think you've got some exciting things going on, and we really appreciate the council working with us on getting a market competitive salary range that we think is going to get us the ability to attract some of those very experienced candidates. So do appreciate that. Kind of next steps after this, I'll need to reach out with the city attorney to kind of go through employment agreement. I like to have that drafted ahead of time to give a chance to kind of work through that we kind of have a fill in the blanks employment agreement ready to go prior to interview weekend. And then basically what we do at the end of the day, if and when council is ready to make an employment offer, we'll talk through an offer letter point by point and get an acceptable offer letter. We then call the candidate, talk through it with them, try to, we'll ask the council in advance kind of what we have for flexibility in any of the offer points. We'll then talk through the candidate with it, hopefully get a verbal agreement, and then we'll send them a signed offer letter from the mayor saying this is the offer, and it's subject to final council approval and approval of employment agreement. And then basically we were able to take that offer letter and just use those points in the offer letter to fill in the blanks of the employment agreement. So usually we move pretty darn fast. I mean, it's not every time, but very often we are working over the weekend after the council has done the interviews and made the offer. And we very often have a signed employment agreement for council for that next Monday or Tuesday, and you guys meet on Mondays, so it's a little more rushed, but we often have a signed employment agreement ready for the council to look at on Monday. So that's really kind of our goal. We think it behooves both parties. Once you've established mutual interest and they have the skills and attributes that are good to be successful, we find it's in both parties' interest to move quickly. Don't overthink it. If you've got somebody that really fits the organization, fits the profile, has the right types of experience, seems to relate well with people in your organization, and really interested in calling the community home, then you just seal that deal. So that's kind of how we do things, and just kind of a preview. But basically, what I'd be doing here within the next month is getting a draft employment agreement together. I'll communicate with the city attorney on that, and just provide that information, and then we can talk through any specific wording adjustments in that. So that's a major step. I kind of provided you in the memo just some overview. I really think you guys are going to be fine. Since we got the salary figured out, I think in an acceptable manner. You guys are familiar with employment agreements with your past administrators, and I don't think there's really going to be anything we're going to propose that's surprising. Generally speaking, our philosophy is really where the administrator kind of has a different standing than the rest of staff is, you have to certainly take a look at the severance pay, being a very important, that's very different than other staff, but the position's a lot more at risk than those other staff. But by and large, we really liked, and we also want to get specific on kind of what performance evaluations look like. But other than that, really, it's our philosophy that, other than, okay, if it's somebody with 10 years of experience, you might treat them like a 10-year employee for vacation. Other than that, we generally don't like to propose, and we will never propose. If we get it proposed by a candidate, then we'll talk through it with them. But we don't like special arrangements for I have to pay less in health insurance premiums or have some goodies and sick leave or something like that. We just generally don't like those things. We don't think that really fits with the kind of the public sector accountability and the nature of the position. So generally speaking, we'll hold them to kind of the points that I've got listed there as real negotiation points.
So I was just curious, because one of the points in here is severance pay.
Yep.
Did we have that with Aaron, or we did? I just wondered if that was.
In almost every
Yeah.
contract.
Yeah, I didn't know
Yeah,
how far
it's-
back we had that before, so I was just curious.
Yeah, it's really a must, I think, to recruit a experienced candidate.
Sure.
Like I said, the position is uniquely at risk in the organization because sometimes if there's a changeover in the council, that the new incoming people may be unhappy with some decision the previous council made, and they may take it out on the manager.
Sure.
So that's actually a lot more common for an administrator to be let go. It's very rarely skills. It's more likely to be policy differences and the idea that, well, we need our person in here, not this person that was hired by a previous council.
Sure.
So I think there's a unique risk there, and it's become very industry standard to be looking at a specified severance pay in the employment agreement.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any
Yeah,
other
so-
questions to Brent?
We'll be seeing him in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. Nope, and we'll get all the information out to people. Look forward to it. Pleasure working with you folks, and appreciate your confidence. And we will work very, very hard for you, and hopefully put you in a great position here moving forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great night.
Okay, the next item next action item is consideration of future use of current fire station. I put this on the agenda, primarily because, this had been on the agenda for the supervisors that the city may be interested in a swap for the current fire station. My understanding from Melanie is that that's off the table. However, it's still worth the property committee starting to talk through what's the best use of that building once we have moved over to the new fire station. So I would just like to get it moved and have it be reviewed by property committee.
To make the motion to refer it to property committee.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Flournoy, second by Ham. Any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes?
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Alrighty, next action item, consideration of supplemental agreement number 1. This is the final design phase service replacement of Crow Creek Bridge with Calhoun-Burns Associates. So go ahead, Melanie.
Okay, so the agreement that the agreement that is in front of you tonight is for an estimated total of $126,500. This is an amendment to the original agreement that was only for $32,000. So the original work was basically to get us through the environmental phase and the soil boring. So very initial amount of work to make sure that the simpler bridge that we were expecting would work there. And so that is the case. So the agreement that's in front of you is for final design of the Crow Creek Bridge that we would recommend approval. Please.
So moved. Moved to approve.
Moved by Toohill,
Second.
second by Esti. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Toohill.
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Next action item, consideration of application for the purpose of receiving benefits from the Washington County Riverboat Foundation. I understand this is, again, regarding the fire station, the training tower and classrooms, is that correct?
Correct. So we did get the application from Pathfinders and attach that kind of at the last minute. So you'll see on the resolution that it was actually due yesterday. So Pathfinders went ahead and submitted it because I figured you guys would be okay with applying for additional money, grant money for the project. But we submitted it without the resolution, and knowing that they will come back, or hoping that they'll come back and ask us for the resolution, and then that you can provide it for us. What we are asking for is for full funding of the training tower portion. Knowing that not only our department will benefit, but the surrounding departments, including those that are in Washington County. So we think that it is a great thing for Washington County Riverboat Foundation to fund. It is a little bit of a Hail Mary as far as asking for full funding for the tower. But at this point in the game, we thought might as well ask for it all, and that we would have another grant cycle before we're done with the project, that we could apply for it again if they do turn us down. So we would ask for the support for the application that we turned in yesterday.
When do they make the grants, Melanie?
So the announcements are either in May or June.
Okay.
And they want it used within a year. And so Ashley did talk to the coordinator about the whole project, and that, we're looking at an 18-month construction, and that's definitely acceptable. Most of their grant money does not go to larger projects like this. So they do understand that for larger projects that they have to bend the rules a little bit, and that they're understandable of that.
What's the request about for?
500,000.
I saw the request is 500,000. The training tower is 400. It's like 500 the the upper end limit max or
So the
projected
Yeah, the construction.
overrun?
Yeah, the construction amount is 400, and then when you put in the civil site, the work around it, the design work, the contractor's bond, throw all that stuff in there, it comes to 500,000.
Got it.
Well, the resolution I read, the grant application lines were blank. Okay.
Yep. That's what happens when you're putting together an application in a hurry, but Pathfinders did a great job, much better than I could have done in a hurry, so.
So I'd make the motion to approve the application for
Washington County Riverboat.
Washington County Riverboat Foundation for the training tower and the training components.
Great, moved by Flornoy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Anderson. Any further discussion? Questions?
Do we have to retro? Do we,
This actually would
No.
be,
no. Okay. All right.
The one thing I wanted to add is, so we are gonna be applying for more grants. I'll bring some additional resolutions in front of you. We do plan to apply for Jefferson County Foundation money for the classroom space alone. So we've designated certain areas. We thought that would be better to say, you know, okay, the classroom space paid for by Greater Jefferson County, the tower paid by, you know, by certain areas, rather than just applying to it as a whole. So that's the next application that we're working on. And there's a couple EMA grants that we plan on looking at as well.
is it fair to characterize this as a regional training center if we get this all done?
Yes.
I mean, all the way to Burlington, past Atomwa even?
Yes, there is, so Atumwa does have a tower that is used at Indian Hills for the certificate training. So I don't know how much the fire departments actually get to use it. And then otherwise, I believe the next closest one is Iowa City.
That's where that's where Indian Hills class is though.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I don't
know.
know how much the fire departments actually get to use it, but you know, it is very fair to say that it's a regional, it can be a regional training facility. Yep. And maybe, you know, if you go a couple counties out, may not be as often, but we do mutual aid for Brighton, which the Brighton Fire Department covers part of Jefferson County, but also covers into Washington County. And Richland comes in, but then Richland also covers part of Washington County. So even just the mutual aid departments that we serve with will serve surrounding
But if
counties.
Sigourney wanted to come down or Pella wanted to come down and use
Absolutely,
it,
yeah.
we would let them come down and use it.
Washington, you know, any of them surrounding, because we do, and I mean, a large structure fire, we're gonna be working with those surrounding counties anyway. I think the hog confinement fire that was over in the Brighton area, I mean, that had Washington, Lockridge, Brighton, Fairfield. So it had the fire departments that were adjacent to us, but then it had that next ring, or that next
Tier.
range out. Yeah, that next tier out. So, you know, it'll be good for the region to train together on something like that as well. So, sorry, that was my comment. I just didn't want you to forget to finalize it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And boy, I sure hope they give us good consideration. So if there's no other questions, let's call the roll.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
I'm not sure we've ever gotten any money out of Washington Foundation anywhere, so,
It's not easy. This would be a real coup.
right?
Well, to a
Okay.
degree, they don't want to look like they're totally focused on Washington County either. So we might have a chance at something like this.
Yeah, well, hopefully, you know, they like the project, so. Okay, the next resolution is consideration of a tax abatement application for 403 West Briggs Avenue.
I move we approve the tax abatement application for 403 West Briggs Avenue.
Moved by Flournoy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Toohill. Any other questions?
Is that the old Lazier?
Old Leisure's
Okay.
Appliances,
Lazier.
yep,
Yeah. Okay.
yep. Please call the roll.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Next resolution, consideration of amending rates for miscellaneous fees. Rebecca, you just want to explain this real quick?
These are the fees that we actually charge for copies, and what we're doing is we're bringing it up to the same as what the library charges, I believe. Yes.
Okay.
Ways and Means looked at it and recommended approval.
Okay.
So I make a motion to approve the fee adjustment for copies and
Okay.
documents.
Moved by Flournoy, is there a
Second.
second? Second by Toohill. Any further discussion or questions? Not, please call the roll.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Toohill.
Oh,
Yes.
No, go ahead, sorry.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
Thank you. Next resolution, consideration of amending rates for labor and equipment. Melanie, you want to explain?
So these are our rates that we use if we have to do work on private property, such as replacing a curb stop that somebody has been notified that they need to replace and they don't do it in the time frame. And so these are the established rates that we use for the equipment. Any cleanup that the code compliance officer does would also be using these rates. The last time it's been about a year and a half since these were looked at. So the equipment rates are based off of the Iowa Department of Transportation equipment rate schedule. And so that's why only some of these are increased and others of them are not. There were two other changes that were made. There had been a minimum of 1 hour labor added to all invoices for processing, tracking, and mailing. Sometimes it takes people multiple bills to pay, and it was to account for that time. Found that people have gotten a lot better at paying their bills, and that 1 hour has been excessive more than it hasn't been. So we would like to bring that down to a minimum of half an hour. If we do find that somebody has been problematic or their bill took a really long time to put together because it was a really big cleanup or something like that, that we would then charge more than a half an hour. But that automatic office fee, we're recommending putting that down to a half an hour. And then one change since it went to the Ways and Means was the hydrovac truck, TV truck. The wastewater department would like that to be a 2 hour minimum charge. With that being a more expensive piece of equipment, it's really just not worth his time for it to be pulled out of service to go somewhere. He's actually been called to other communities in order to use that piece of equipment. And he is charging mileage and time there and stuff like that, and contractors and things like that. So he is using it a lot, and that's where he wants to have the 2 hour minimum. He thinks it would be beneficial maybe on some of the jobs where somebody might look a little bit harder for a sewer lateral before they give him a call instead of pulling them out. And so he asked for that change since it went to Ways and Means.
The way it's written in front of us, it's just a blanket 2 hour minimum charge. It's not specific to the hydro truck.
If you go up to the list, under hydrovac TV truck, there's like a little H in parentheses, and then
Yeah.
Oh, down below?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask what's a hydrovac truck?
It's a truck with a big vacuum on it, like a big shop vac.
Oh, okay.
So
Truck
it,
size.
Powered by water.
What?
I'm guessing.
Truck size shop vac.
yeah, and so
Okay.
it'll suck up it will dig a hole about yay big. And so they'll use it to find utilities without making a huge mess.
Okay.
It can also be used, and this is where we go to other towns for, is if a sewer manhole is plugged up, that you can suck out a sewer manhole
Clean it out.
and clean it out. And that's what he's been called to other communities for.
It'll
But-
actually suck a snowsuit out of the sewer.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to know why.
We've done that.
Yeah, I know, and John represents the town that we've had to go to a lot lately. But
Is this the same piece of equipment that is used to do the porous bricklaying for the,
yes, yep, Yep.
so it gets other uses other than just the,
sewer and
what's the word
the
I'm looking for the, semi-permeable
Yeah.
bricks that we
Yep.
put in for
Yep.
water drainage.
Yep.
So Ways and Means also looked at this and approved, or recommended approving that revision.
Great.
So I'll make the motion to approve the,
Moved by Flournoy,
Second.
second by Rasmussen. Any other questions?
I was gonna say.
Not, please call the roll.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
So the next item is to open the public hearing on the fiscal year 24 capital improvements plan. Melanie, do you want to say anything about this before? Well, I'm going to open the public hearing because there's no one here, and then I'll close the public hearing. So I don't know if you want to make any more comments.
I can't think of anything really particular.
It's not very
I-
exciting.
Yeah, it's not as exciting. I want to, I guess, maybe compliment the council and the department heads as far as the capital assets shortfall that we've talked about in the past, through donations to our foundations, and then also your action on Second and Broadway has dropped that shortfall a little, not all the way. But those traffic signals were a big monkey on our back as far as something that we know is out there that we don't necessarily have a mechanism for funding. So by voting to remove that takes $300,000 to $500,000 out of our needs in the future, and so that's great. The donations to Carnegie Foundation took another $400,000 off of future needs. Donations to the Parks Department took another $100,000 off of the future needs. So there's been some good planning and thought process, and if we just keep looking at some of these assets that maybe we've forgotten about over the last 10, 15 years, if we don't forget about them, that we'll still be making good progress on funding them. So.
You're making a great point, though, because some of these items, particularly in the parks area where estates have given money to the city, I mean, it's a wonderful thing that our citizens have done for Fairfield and for the future of Fairfield. So thank you to those people who planned, and we hope there's more in the future.
Yeah, and if anyone is curious about planning, John Morrissey, and I can certainly tell you a list of other projects that are needed. So
There you go.
we can find a project for you to put your name on.
There you go. So, mentioning the street lights, when do we anticipate those coming down?
The street department's going to do it themselves.
Yes. They have that on their agenda?
It's on their agenda for this summer. I need
Okay.
to coordinate with DOT. I was trying to get just a few things done before I worried too much about summer construction.
Yeah.
My goal is to get them done before August so that the signs still make sense.
All right. Okay.
So I know that there was a comment or two about the signs, and it hasn't overlapped a year, so they're still okay.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, I'll take a motion to.
I'll make the motion to approve the CIP.
Okay, moved by Flournoy, second by Ham. Any further discussion or questions?
Ways and Means did recommend to council to approve it as presented.
Okay, great. Please call the roll.
Ham.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Flournoy.
Yes.
Then Ham.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Next is the public hearing for the fiscal year 24 budget. So I'll open the public hearing. And seeing there's no one here, nobody wants to talk. All right, so I'm going to close the public hearing and move on to the resolution. And if anybody's got this on your iPad, you will see there is a budget summary, which is a little bit different format than this. And I just want to note that the current levy is 16.9 versus last year it's 16.07, so, it did go up a little bit.
Quite a bit.
What?
83 cents went up.
There you go. Yep, correct.
Okay, so Ways and Means looked at this, of course, is recommending approval. You saw the local option sales tax, organizational requests and what we granted. We had sufficient funds to meet virtually every request. We did not fund Fairfield Cares fully. We, instead of, I think they asked for 40, well, it says here 38, but I have in my notes 43. Did they send an amendment in?
No, I didn't think so. Oh, yes, they did. I apologize. Yes, they did.
Okay, they asked for
Yes.
43, but we agreed on 3,000 to give them some funds to get them up and going and identifying needy individuals. Is that what you were thinking, Judy?
I beg your pardon, would you say that again?
Fairfield Cares.
Yes.
We gave them 3,000 to get them up and going and identifying individuals in need of assistance, rather than fully funding them at this point.
Right. Because their project was still pretty new.
Yeah. Then we did not fund the, I don't know how to pronounce this,
Kahiki.
Kahigi Historical Golf Foundation.
Kahagi.
Kahagi? Right, we didn't fund it. That was a request for funds to support a children's golf club of some kind,
Lessons.
lessons and
Yeah.
what have you. And to make some modifications to the country club's golf course, which we didn't think was appropriate for city taxpayers to pay for. Everything else was funded in full. We did even have a surplus of $28,726. On the top half of the list, we did the traditional funding of the police vehicle. I can't remember why we're giving $1,500 to City Hall. Does anyone remember why? Huh?
The
The
employee
employee
appreciation.
appreciation.
Oh, that's appreciation dinner. I thought it was a coffee machine for Melanie. My
I
mistake.
want to see that machine.
Fire department equipment for $23,000. Fireworks we do every year. Parks and Rec, the new playground equipment at O.B. Nelson, $50,000. Ambulance, $60,000. Beautification Commission, $10,000. That's an increase from usually we give them $6,000. So they're broadening out their duties. Fairfield Arts Convention Center came and gave us a very nice presentation. We're awarding them $50,000 for maintenance. And we set aside $100,000 every year for a fire truck replacement, so that's all standard.
Is the 60 for the ambulance, 60,000, is that 1/3 of the price of a new ambulance for this? Since we were planning on replacing one this year, right? Or buying an additional one this year?
I'm not exactly sure where the money's going, but we do $60,000 every year, so
Okay.
maybe it is.
All right.
Elizabeth, can you?
I think we talked about rotating one every year.
I'm racking my mind. I think that it's 120. I think it is a third.
So
And
180 for a new one, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
every year
Because
we'll
we
rotate
did
one
the
out.
buy of the new long truck just recently, so we're actually building for the next one, aren't we?
It's budgeted for this year. I know that was one of the considerations before
Yeah.
I left the board.
We bought one when CARE started, and then
Right.
and then this will be, and then we plan on replacing one each year
Every year,
from there on out. So okay, all right.
I think there's some difficulties with the lead times too in getting one, so sometimes that will push out
Yeah.
when we're able to actually get the.
Okay, in terms of fund balances, this was attached. We revised it this year to make it a little bit more clear, I think. So if you look at, well, a couple years ago or last year even, it just showed revenues and expenditures, and it showed a lot of negative balances for end of the year because there's carryover money from this year that will pay for expenses into next year. So I had asked Rebecca if she would put in projected fiscal year '24 beginning balance and ending balance. So all those negative balances you saw on those sheets in the past, like this year, they're covered by money being carried forward. In spite of that, we had a $444,580 deficit in the general fund. It had to be made up. So the recommendation that city administrator made and the committee is referring to council for approval is to make up that deficit of $444,000 by taking $167,653 from the lost fund balance. This would be the lost betterment, community betterment portion of the lost monies, which has a balance of around $315,000. And then the other $276,927 would come from the general fund cash reserve. There is currently, well, on this sheet here, it says we're expected to have 2.5 million almost in the fiscal year 24 beginning. So we would take out $276,000, almost $300,000. We'd still have 2.1 roughly in that balance at the beginning of fiscal year 24. According to our financial policy, we need to have a minimum of $1.5 million in there. So we are well above that, even after we take the money out to pay for the deficit. But while I was sitting here, I was wondering, or earlier today, we could take the entire $444,000 out of the general cash reserve and not take any of the money out of the lost fund. And my thought on that was, if the money's in the lost account and not in the general fund, then we have more flexibility with that money down the road. And there is sufficient money in the general reserve to cover the deficit and still have us well above the required minimum for that fund. So that's just something to consider, although the committee has not taken that question up. It's just something I had on my head today.
Doug, what was the amount for the lost again?
167,653. But even if we did take that money out of lost, there is, if I can find it on here, $315,000 is the expected fiscal year 24 beginning balance, and the ending balance would be $336,226 on June 30, 2024. So it's almost invisible in terms of balances, but you could have that lost balance next year being $400,000 or $500,000 for community betterment instead of in the general fund. Depends on what the council might want to do with it. So that's out there. A couple more things I want to mention. Let's see if I can find everything here that I wanted to talk about. So, yeah, part of the reason for the deficit is we are incorporated into the budget all the recommendations from the police study. So our police salaries went up from $494 up to over $1 million, $1,003,000. So that's about a 10% increase. And another concern I had going through the budget was Evergreen Cemetery did ask us for $75,000 this year. And we did agree to give them $50,000. And I still don't understand that completely because we don't have an agreement with them. And it's not clear to me how much of that property that is in Evergreen Cemetery is actually city property. And we haven't seen their complete budget. So we're giving them $50,000. I think we should look into that and see what their balances are and their budget is, and
I think you can pretty much
have an
know
agreement of
that
some
their
kind, is my
balances
thought.
are almost zero. I mean, they are really struggling. I mean, having several, contacts with the board, that they are really, because, people really aren't using the cemetery like they used to in years gone by, because
Right.
so many people are cremated and not being buried, and that they simply are struggling with their resources.
Well, I've been informed that ultimately, if that association fails, then the
Right.
city will have to take full responsibility for that cemetery.
Right.
And that might be on the order of $200,000 a year by the time we get there. It's already over $125,000 a year. And they're complaining in their communications to us about the inability to hire people who will come out there and work to mow the lawns and take care of the place. So
Right.
I think we should think about a long-term solution there, somewhere down the road. There's another cemetery on Burlington that we'd never hear from them. They're solvent, I guess.
Sort of difficult because that's sort of one of the old historic aspects of Fairfield is the,
Sure.
Cemetery Association.
So,
Yeah.
Doug, would you like somebody from the Cemetery Association come and give a presentation?
That would be great, I think.
Okay, I can make that happen.
And I think that's all I have. If there are any questions?
I think you pointed out a couple things that, if you didn't point out, I was gonna point out, but you
Okay.
did that, so.
So I would
Any other
recommend.
questions?
I have one question, and maybe you already explained this, but when you're doing the lost funds, is this just everything that was actually taken or everything that was approved out of lost funds?
We'll prove it tonight when we vote on this.
So the top half of that is a given year over year. We try very hard to give to those. The bottom half are the applications, and you
Right.
see every application received, and then you see how much we awarded each one. So a couple of
sorry.
those didn't get fully funded.
I
Yeah, so
see.
Arts Convention Center, instead of having to apply for money, I asked that they get moved to another line so they automatically get
Got it.
50,000 or whatever we decide each year. Same thing with Beautification Committee. And,
But you are seeing every application we received, and then you're also seeing how much we decided as a committee to recommend to council.
Okay. But because we were discussing earlier about the RIC volunteers, that was from Lost,
right,
right?
so that'll come out of this. That $315,000 that we have at the beginning of the fiscal year,
Okay,
it's in that fund, it's not in. What we do every
there's
year
two
is we
funds.
have $1 million
Okay.
roughly.
uh-huh,
$500,000 goes to streets, and the other $500,000 goes to community betterment.
okay,
So this is how that community betterment money was spent.
I see.
We have a surplus of 28,000, that'll go into the lost community betterment fund as opposed to the lost street fund.
Okay,
Right, Rebecca?
Clear's mud. Yes. Clear's mud? Thank you. Yeah.
all right,
Which is, and then that fund is, we have 800,000 in the
Yes.
lost street fund.
Street
right?
fund. Correct.
So we're doing pretty well in those two funds.
That's spoken
Yeah,
for.
for
Yeah.
now. Yeah, right?
Melody's
It's being
got plans
saved
for
for
that.
future
Yes.
projects
That's
that are coming up. Yeah.
So look, I guess the question then is, I'm just making that suggestion or for you to think about, the 167, should we take out a lost or general fund? Rebecca, what do you think? I put this to her earlier today, so she's had some time to think about it.
I like it the way it sits, but that's just my opinion.
I think we are gonna maybe have future projects that you might wanna consider staying where you're at right now.
And it would be easier to allocate funds out of the lost funds or the city budget than if we took it all.
General.
General fund, sorry.
Depends what they are.
Yeah.
If they're,
I know, I just thought we had more flexibility with our lost
yes,
funds.
yes, you do.
The money that we're allocating out of loss is coming out of the community betterment
Right.
portion of the two lost accounts. that we have.
It's a nice
Just an idea.
separation as it sits.
Okay, so is
Leave it.
there a motion to approve?
Didn't we already have a motion?
Nope.
No, you
Oh.
didn't ever quite get it
Nope.
out.
Well,
We kept
We're
asking
waiting for you to finish
questions.
it, Doug.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Toohill. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Ham. Any further discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Flournoy,
yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Esty.
Yes,
Great, thank you. Next is the matter of drawings and specification for demolition of 301 to 307 West Briggs Avenue. I'll open a public hearing and I'll close a public hearing because there's no one here.
it's my victory lap.
And then we go to the action item. So Melanie, do you want to say anything additional here?
I don't want to say anything on the drawings.
Okay. Okay, so is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Anderson.
I will second.
Second by Ham. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Esti?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Okay, now we go to the consideration of award of demolition of those buildings, so. Now it's your turn. You gonna say something about that?
I
Awarding
do,
the bid?
but I've never been at so much of a loss of words, no. Tom had a question on page 200 and.
29. 330. Yes.
Yeah.
That's impressive, Tom.
You just opened it up and that was the one
Yeah.
you came to.
Exactly.
Okay. So last week we received bids for the demolition of the 2 former DOT buildings, which you just approved the bid documents on. There were 6 bids, 7 bids received. 1 bid was thrown out. The bid bond was not in the proper amount, and so that one was not counted. So the low bid was from DW Zinzer. They are out of, it's not on here.
Walden?
Waldorf?
Well, something like that.
Near the Cedar Rapids area.
Yes.
Is
And
it Walcott?
no, it's not Walcott.
There's a ballroom in
Oh, there's a Walford.
Walford, thank you.
Walford.
There we go.
Walford.
And so as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference between DW Zinzer and then the second low bid, which was Bob Brown Excavating from here in Fairfield. Sorry, DW Zinzer was at $109,300. Bob Brown was at $279,250, and then the architect's estimate was at $535,000. And
Is
so
that Klinginger's estimate?
yes,
Did that include the buildings we sold and everything else too? Is
nope,
that, no.
that was already not included
Okay.
in the bid. So the bid documents included, and the bids were supposed to include asbestos removal in the 2 buildings. There's a little bit of asbestos in both of the existing buildings. Complete removal of the buildings, removal of the concrete on site, removal of the remaining foundation from the old middle school building that was there, old high school building that was there, and then grading the site to rough grades of what we're expecting the new site to be at. And so first let me talk about the architect's estimate. So I'm not concerned about the difference or the architect's estimate being over a majority of the bidders. We've got a chunk of contractors that are in around that $300,000 range. And so that makes me feel that they were extra conservative on the architect was extra conservative on their bid. There's a lot of rock that's going to be put back on the site to fill in where the foundations were. And so a change in that rock cost can make a big difference. I know the architect is assuming everything is hauled to the landfill. If a contractor is taking the concrete to a local site or their own site and they're gonna reuse it on another job, that's gonna bring the cost down too. So I feel, I'm not concerned about the difference between the bids and the architect's estimate.
Just one question.
Yeah,
I did have someone call me about the bidding process,
yeah.
and they were under the impression that the concrete could not go to the landfill.
Really?
Yeah,
Did it say that in the specs or?
that's just what he told me.
Huh.
So I was just curious about that.
Did he call the?
He thought he had to go to a crusher and get recycled, I guess. All right.
And I'll be honest that I don't, I I didn't read the specs as good as Tom did, so I did not think that was what they said, but I also didn't read them thoroughly. I guess if the contractor questioned something like that, I hope they would have called the architect to get clarification, and if they hadn't gotten an answer from the contractor or from the architect. That's more what concerns me, is if like Klingner wasn't getting back to contractors on their questions.
No, it wasn't anything like that. It was
Okay.
just casual comment
Okay.
when we were discussing the bids.
Okay. And I don't know, Judy, do you know anything about maybe is Simcoe not taking concrete? Would you know?
I have not heard anything to that effect,
Yeah.
no.
I mean, that could be it too. I can, let me look into that particular question and get back to you on that one. Because the crushing of the rock does play into all of this, into my next,
Yeah.
situation.
Semco uses any crushed rock and stuff for their own usage
Right.
because they really push a lot of
Yeah.
dirt out. So they do need gravel. They never complain about
Right.
having extra.
Right, yeah, so, but I will look into that.
Okay.
So they crush it on site?
Simcoe?
Yeah, they'll use,
So maybe
because
that's what
they
you
can
meant, was
use
that
it.
It was going to the crusher, not to the landfill, but to the landfill location
To be crushed.
where they to be crushed, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But yeah, I will look into that particular comment. Okay,
Melanie,
Yeah.
is there somebody that knows Zinser in a prior contract
so.
circumstance?
Yeah, so that's the next thing that I wanted to get into was the difference between Zinser and Bob Brown Excavating. So we called Zinser the day of the bids and just did a first reaction. Hey, did you include everything in your bid? And without, I mean, just asking that question, he listed off the things that we were concerned that maybe he forgot. He mentioned, oh yeah, I know there's 2 buildings and I know that there's a old school foundation and I know I have to do the asbestos removal. So the first initial phone call was very, seemed like he knew what was going on.
Did it sound like maybe he had a use for all of the salvage?
He
Because that
did.
can make a huge difference.
Right, he did. He also made a remark about having a place to go with it. And then, and I admit, you know, anyone can make up a website. They have a very good website with tons of experience. They've done several hospitals and they've done a couple schools. So, you know, resume wise and paperwork wise, their entire bid was in order. And another thing that I think can make a difference is they do the asbestos and the rock crushing all in-house. They're not going to have to hire a sub. I'm not going to say that's $100,000 difference, but that might be, you know, a $15,000 difference, just not having to hire that sub for like the asbestos. So they are doing a lot of that in-house. The initial thought was they seem to have everything in order. Of course, now we've had a week to stir on it, and we're like, okay, seriously, what'd they forget? What is going on? So we are going to have a phone conversation with them tomorrow. We're going to have an internal call tomorrow, and then talk with them some more, find out exactly who their rock supplier is, and some more details. For example, where they plan on taking their waste product. Do they know that the bridge on 78 on the way to Simcoe is closed? You know that
It's, the bridge is on the west
On the other side?
so
Okay.
you can get there through Richland.
Okay, all right. Well, just different, have some more detailed conversations with them. So that being said, their bid was in order. And the motion that I would be looking for tonight, unless you just want to go ahead and flat out award it, would be to issue the notice of intent to award
or if you want to simply make a motion to accept the bids, because like I said, their bid was in order. They are the low bid, unless something very alarming comes up in this second discussion with them. We plan on proceeding with them as the low. So by issuing a notice of intent to award allows us to kind of discuss the contract, but yet it's not as binding as a contract would be. And then we can bring the contract in front of you in 2 weeks for actual signature. So that's a little bit different procedure than what we normally do, but we think given this scenario, it will allow us to proceed. We also don't want him to get too cold of feet either and think, that we're not good to work with. And so that's where issuing the notice of intent to award would be a reasonable motion at this time.
So I'll make that motion. Intend to award the contract to DW Sensor Company for $109,300.
Okay, moved by Flournoy.
Second.
Is there
Second by
expiration for that, or?
Rasmussen.
It's,
30 days from the bids. So when we bring it to you in 2 weeks, we'll still be fine.
Okay.
it's actually page 43 of the document if you want to see it, believe it or not.
I'm almost there. I'm on page 35.
It's on 43.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I
Okay,
gotcha.
so we do have a motion and a second. And I think, it sounds like a good plan. There's such a huge range. Let's just double cross everything and make
Yeah.
sure that it looks in order.
So the bonding company, do you ever talk to them about a little bit like this?
So the bonding company comes into play if they don't complete the work. The bond is for the amount of the contract. So depending on the bond company, they could handle this. And depending on how far along the contractor got, if they would get so far and not be able to complete the job, the bond company could handle it a couple different ways. They could write us a check for $109,000 and say, go hire someone else to finish the job.
Which we can't do.
But either way, we would still be paying somebody, if we rejected this bid, we would still have to pay Bob Brown's $279. So, we would be ahead that way. Or the bonding company would hire their own contractor to finish the work. One thing that we want to watch very carefully, and this comes into your next item, is making sure that the asbestos gets removed right away and they don't come in just smashing everything down. Because then if they would walk away from it, we actually end up worse than where we were. Most demo projects, you don't end up worse than where you were. But with asbestos, we want to make sure that that gets removed properly in the beginning. And with Klingner's assistance, we'll be able to keep an eye on them.
And just out of curiosity, what's our policy? Like, the next bid would have had to been how close for us to have to go with the local?
1%.
1%. Okay.
Okay, so any other questions or discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Esti,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Great, thank you. So last action item here, consideration of proposal of construction materials testing and geotechnical consultation. Again, this is for the new fire station demo and site prep.
Right. So during construction, the backfill will be compacted, and so Klingner's sub-company, Geotechnics, would do testing on that material as it's laid to make sure it's meeting the required specifications so that we can build the new fire station. And so they have an estimated amount, a budget amount of $16,500. That's an hourly rate depending on how things go during construction. And they would also, I believe this would also cover, again, some of their time during construction for other needs of the contractor.
Great, thanks. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Anderson,
Second.
second by Toohill. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Esti?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so under the mayor's report, I want to congratulate Elizabeth for becoming our assistant county attorney. And with that in mind, we are going to replace her on the ambulance board. I'm going to appoint Tom Toohill to take her place, just so there's no conflicts of interest. So we'll do that. And next we'll have a beautification commission appointment, Marlene Blakely. She does live in the 3rd Ward, and I think she'll be a good addition. I'm sorry I don't have one of the requests to serves. She hadn't gotten that to me yet, but I really want to get her on the board and moving. So I would take a motion to approve her. She's been a longtime resident here, Fairfield.
So moved.
Moved by Anderson,
Second.
second by Ham. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All those opposed, same sign. Thank you for approving her. And then on the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center, I got a communication from Bill Herlin that they want to appoint Jennifer Patt, or they've already put her on the board, and they want her to be the city's appointee. And she has worked for several firms here in Fairfield, particularly in the accounting and finance area. Randy Dillon, I think he's still on the board, but I think he's stepping back a little bit. So it's great to have another person with good finance background for the board. So I would take a motion to approve her.
So moved.
Moved by Anderson.
Second.
Second by Ham. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Want to note that, and Doug brought this to my attention today, worldatlas.com named Fairfield as one of the best small towns in Iowa to retire in. So that was pretty cool. We're up there with Pella and Decorah and
Winterset.
Winterset,
I'm trying to think who else is on
Algona,
that.
Spencer, somewhere. Anyway, so I thought it was kind of cool. Wanted to update you also. We mentioned probably a couple months ago, maybe, or a month ago, a solar project at the airport. I did check in with Dave Vollmer of Alliant, and he turned it into, their project list. So he's waiting to hear back from those people who review all that. And so, we're on the waiting list here, I guess.
This is where we rent them the land, or
Yes.
let them use city land, and they give us money for the
Yep.
rental fee,
Yep.
and they make solar energy.
Yep. And then up on the screen, we have a proclamation for the Iowa Honeybee Day. So I'm going to read that. Whereas honeybees and native insects are important as pollinators for a third of the food we eat, honeybees are vital in production of over 90 crops grown across the nation, many of which are in Iowa. Honeybees contribute to a healthy Iowa environment by assuring the availability of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and flowers for wildlife and all Iowans. And whereas Iowa's 45,000 or more honeybee hives produce about 4 million pounds of honey, valued at over $8 million, and honeybees provide an estimated 92 million economic value to Iowa crops for their pollination. And where Iowa has over 4,500 beekeepers representing hobbyists, sideliners as part-time small businesses, and full-time commercial beekeepers. Beekeepers have as few as 1 to 2 hives in a single apiary to 100 apiaries with thousands of hives of individual commercial operations. And whereas traditionally beekeeping occurred in rural areas of Iowa, now beehives increasingly are in urban areas with the rising interest of hobby beekeepers that keep honeybees in Iowa cities and towns. And whereas the state of Iowa has an active apiary program that protects honeybees and beekeepers by inspecting for apiary diseases, I hope I'm saying that right, by the way, and pests, as well as actively encouraging best beekeeping practices by overreach to individuals and beekeeping groups. And whereas honeybees face serious threats from invasive pests and disease, decreasing bee-friendly habitat, variable climate, and pesticide and herbicide pressure. Therefore, I, Connie Boyer, Mayor of Fairfield, do hereby proclaim March 16th, 2023 as Iowa Honeybee Bee Day and encourage all citizens, residents, and visitors to join in observing this day and focusing on the importance of honeybees to our state economy, to enjoy the honey and other products of the hive, to recognize the honeybees' role in maintaining our environment, and to assist in reducing the threats to honeybee survival in our state. So we wish the honeybees much success. I think I read a statistic that if we ran out of honeybees, we would only live about 3 years, right? Something like that.
How many beekeepers do we have inside the city limits? Do we know?
I don't know. I only know of one personally. But I know of one that's been approved. Yeah.
Intentional beekeepers.
And I know at least a couple out in the county. I'm sure there's more than that. Actually, I know 3. So,
Code enforcement time. I bet you Weston hasn't inspected any hives.
well, we did have, what would you call that, a wild hive on one of our trees a couple years ago. It was fascinating. I thought something was growing on the tree, and then my husband said, no, that's a honeybee hive. And so we called one of our local beekeepers to see if they could get it. It was really cool to watch, except when it got in my hair.
Our ordinance has a permit process, and we have actually, you can get special use permits through the Board of Adjustment if you have to. We probably 30 years ago, we actually did some of that. I know where the hives are hidden.
Yeah.
The honey is.
So just a few other things. I am going to kind of keep you updated through department head meetings until we get a new administrator. So I just want to keep you updated on a few things that seemed important for the public to know. Well, this one didn't come actually from department head, but I did get an email from the TerraCycle group. They collected 9,470 items in 2022. That was a 10% increase. And I wanted to recognize the local partners that are involved with TerraCycle. So those include Everybody's, the Fairfield Public Library, the Fairfield Community Schools, Goodwill, Sustainable Living Coalition, Singing Cedars, Centered Wealth, Fairfield Computer Clinic, Marshy School, MIU, Conley's, and Rotary's Interact, and Cindy's Art Beat. So these are all different places that are participating and have collection sites. So they've had a really good increase since they've been up and running, so that's pretty cool. That's all those things that are not going into the landfill. Then through department head meetings, the Highway 1 South, Alliant is working down there, and they're intermittently having one-lane traffic, so patience through that period until they get done. The library has several new things going on there, and it's been in the paper, but just for the public's notice, they've got some new and expanded hours, and they have somebody's helping them with genealogy. So it looks like they got a kind of a genealogy club now, and so if you're interested in that topic, you can get some help there. And also the Wall Street Journal and New York Times are free now through the library. So that's kind of cool. It was also noted that Liberty Drive will be closed on March 20th, at least partially closed on March 20th. Closed or totally closed for a period during the day. So anything else, Melanie, that you can think of? Okay. So those were the only things that I had. So, a city attorney report.
Yes, couple of small things, and then I want to talk about our animal ordinance as it reflects on numbers of animals that people can keep as pets. We've been notified by ICAP's appointed counsel for us on a suit that we've been pulled into because of a sidewalk over in front of Shokai. And essentially somebody caught their toe in a dip in the sidewalk. We're bound to get sued because the city has deeper pockets than the restaurant, and we both have insurance. So there is going to be a 4-day trial scheduled for the 13th day of February. our appointed counsel is David Schrock. I know David fairly well. He's represented our police department a couple times in the past. I think you regard him highly, don't you, Dave?
Very,
Yeah.
one of the best attorneys I've worked with.
Yeah, and so he'll be giving us,
What was that court date again, John?
pardon,
What was that court date again?
February 13th of 2024.
Okay, that's why I was confused.
Me too.
We're a ways out, but we'll probably have some discovery, and there'll probably be some things that involve people and possibly Melanie about our sidewalk ordinance and how devout we are about paying attention to our safe sidewalks. And actually, I think our town, for what we have on our books, looks better than most towns. So I'm hoping that gets us some points and possibly a settlement. But anyway, that's coming up. We've been working on something with the state ombudsman, and Rebecca's been sort of our patron saint on this with the ombudsman. It's over somebody who's a repeat late payer who complained to the ombudsman because we have a graduated increase in our late payment penalty. And I mean, this whole thing is, it's what I call Shakespearean. It's much ado about not very much. There are like $15 late penalties, there's $30 late penalties, and there's a $50 late penalty for payment. And we have somebody that's a perennial late payer that complained to the ombudsman. And the ombudsman's been prolific as far as sending us pieces of email and so forth about whether we're being punitive or not. And I can't find anything really, and I think Rebecca agrees with me on this, that's punitive about what we have for late payment. We want to try to incentivize people that don't pay on time to not let it happen again. But this, from my perspective, I'm going to have some conversations with the ombudsman about what we know about the history of people, and that we may build in a couple of extra notches as far as getting to where our penalty is. We're not trying to make it impossible for people to have utilities, but we're also entitled after a certain point to treat this like what we call a consumer credit code case, where you only get so many notices in a year, after which time you don't have to give notices anymore. The bank treats people that way. I'm not saying we should treat people like the bank because we're a public servant, but the other side of it is if we don't have a fairly firm financial policy on lateness, we're going to have an increase in our accounts payable from our customers. So we'll be dealing with that. One of the things that perked me up a little bit on that is you just renewed rates and fees, partly for the things we do in-house here as far as office materials that go out. Every time somebody comes in on a Freedom of Information request, we charge them a little bit, don't we? But I think those are all reasonable. I thought that our chart of things that we did as far as our provided services and so forth, I mean, $5 an hour to rent one of our city lawnmowers. We're going to charge them a lot more than that for the labor side of things, but they get advance notice of what we're doing, and I think our rates look reasonable there. So, but I think I may end up in that conversation with our ombudsman as far as towns have to have rates that support what they do that otherwise turn into nuisances. So, having said that, I want to talk about another nuisance that's glowing down in the southeast corner of town, and there is a petition which isn't on our agenda right now, but it's signed by about 30 households concerning some dogs down on East Buchanan. And the house has been the subject of some letter writing by another lawyer to me that represents the owners of the house, and the 20 to 30 animals that live in the house. I have looked into it a couple different ways, and what I think is going on, and I expect you're going to get an opportunity to hear this on a complaint form from Weston probably at one of your next couple meetings, but these folks are deluding themselves that that's a healthy environment for the animals. We've had this probably every 5 years. We've had a situation where somebody had unrealistic numbers of animals, coupled with kind of an obsession. We've had animals to the point where we had 20 cats in a case that was in front of you a few years ago. The court basically found that the animals, based on the testimony of the veterinarians, were being abused by the people that were keeping them in their apartment and saying that nobody could love them like they do. So there's the emotional side of what you might have in an ordinance that restricts numbers. We didn't have restriction of numbers in those cases. It just got so bad that everybody would call it what it looked like. In the dog situation here, I learned that the attorney that's been writing me letters on behalf of the owner sometimes boards her dogs there. And that raised the question about, do you know if the owner has either a kennel license or kennel breeder, because those are the other things that you could have that might justify more animals. Dogs have puppies. And if you don't, probably there's another violation there. And it also, when you're dealing with a kennel or a kennel breeder, your animals create a question for the zoning office, the Board of Adjustment. You can have basically a neighborhood rejection of a kennel or a kennel breeder. Otherwise, our ordinance doesn't say that, though. So if you've got 20 little yippy dogs that are running around and you're not breeding them and you're not calling yourself a kennel, we don't have anything in our ordinance right now except for the fact that the ordinance says except where it becomes a public disturbance. And that's basically what's going on right now with the petition that's coming through Weston, is that the neighbors have all said this has got to the point where it's a public disturbance. The dogs get out of the yard stinks, there's noise all the time, every hour of the day, and the folks may love those dogs, but they're not paying attention to what it's doing to the rest of the neighborhood. So confronted with that, we have a part of our ordinance that usually only kicks in after you've had an animal abuse situation, or you've had an animal bite situation, or you've had an animal hygiene situation. It's called irresponsible animal ownership. And you can appeal that. If we find that there have been multiple violations, the police department can send a notice to the dog owners that they are irresponsible animal owners and they can't license their dogs anymore. Now, I happen to believe in this particular situation that there aren't 30 animals that are licensed anyway, so some of the threat of taking the license away is pretty hollow. But the other side of it is we have a couple of powers under the state code that allow us to remove the animals that go beyond what we have in our own city ordinance. And we've done this a couple times, usually when somebody that had the animals and couldn't take care of them anymore, probably because they were hospitalized themselves, because they couldn't take care of themselves and were off at Iowa City or Des Moines. At that point, they had an attorney, and we worked through an attorney to see that the animals were placed out of the house. So when the person came back from their own treatment, they didn't have a house full of animals to deal with again. But at this point, our ordinance doesn't specify a single thing about numbers of animals. Cats, ferrets, dogs, parakeets, whatever pet your preference is. We don't say one single number in regards to what is appropriate and what isn't. We had 6 months of conversations with the public about this about 10 years ago when we passed our animal control ordinance that's ours to deal with right now. And it was very unpopular to tell people that we were going to restrict the number of animals they could have, but most people were talking about whether you're talking about 2 dogs or 3 dogs or 2 cats or 3 cats. My wife's daughter had 3 cats, and we liked them a lot, but we didn't intend on having 6 cats. And I think probably most households, they sort of know their limit. When you got one that doesn't, probably we'd be doing the public a favor if we brought this back up as a question. And it probably belongs in front of Property Committee and Public Safety as far as things that affect the neighborhood in the sense of property and use of property or abuse of property, but also public safety because it's a noise nuisance, it's a health nuisance. If it smells bad, it probably is bad. And it's the kind of thing where we want to do something to try to accommodate reasonable ownership. At the same time, we have a reason for a kennel breeder license. We also have a reason for giving the neighbors an opportunity to indicate that it's disturbing. I've told Weston that I think he would be ahead not to turn this into a litigation right now until we find out what the temperature of the council is as far as how many are the right number of animals, or do you want to get specific about limitations on numbers of animals. And we've had numbers discussed a few times in the past for things like chickens. And, you know.
We have a limit on chickens.
Yeah.
The chickens.
Yeah, 10 is our limit.
Yeah.
And John,
Yes.
are other cities our size, do they have a limit on cats or
Some do.
dogs?
Some do.
And what does that look like?
Well, if you
You
go
think an
down,
average?
if you go down the road, Birmingham has like a limit of 4 animals. Over at Stockport, I haven't been to a council meeting over there in a few years. They used to have a limit of 6 combined animals in a household. These are smaller towns. People live farther apart in some parts of town. We have another part of our ordinance that allows you to have domesticated animals all the way up to a horse if you got enough space. You got to have a couple acres of space to have a horse in town. So there are accommodations for things that people don't usually imagine to be the pet situation. But right now, our ordinance was done with recommendations from the National and the State Humane Society. We had input from all of the surrounding towns practically, and we had strong arguments for and against any of these kinds of limits. So, I mean, I know people love their animals, and I don't want this to be, you know, the cause celeb for everybody showing up and being upset about us being heavy-handed about people's pets. We haven't been. We had a animal control officer, Kendrick, years ago, and Kendrick had a pretty good way with people as far as talking about animals that were disturbing. And once in a while, he'd remove an animal and so forth. Right now, it falls on our officers, and it falls on our veterinary clinic when we have animals that are disturbing. And once in a while, we get into these situations. We had a removal case with a woman that went to Iowa City for 6 weeks for her own health. During that 6 weeks' time, we had 20 animals boarded part of the time out at the vet clinic, ran up about $7,500 in bills. Those kinds of situations, they're allowed under the state code. our ordinance never envisions anything like that, and it's kind of scary to suggest that could happen to anybody with their pets in their house, but some people are just bound and determined they're not going to budge on this very much. So what I'm hoping is that Public Safety and Property Committee will take this up with an idea to reviewing whether it doesn't make sense to come in somewhere with a number, and after that, give us a guidance so we can take that ordinance and respond to a petition that you're probably going to be hearing from the neighborhood down on East Buchanan in the meantime.
Okay.
Said enough? Yeah, I don't know if any of you have questions about
Do
this.
you know in
but-
that particular case, has there been an animal welfare check done? Like, are the animals?
I don't know if there has been.
Okay. Because that was what I was thinking too. We need to know if the animals are healthy.
Well, does
Yeah.
it present a public health issue?
It would be at that
It
point,
would be if
yeah.
they're spreading disease.
The letter that I've had from
If they're
the
vaccinated or
attorney
not.
representing the couple of folks that have the animals in the house down there have been very glowing about how wonderfully treated the animals are, how well behaved they are, and that's in contrast to people saying the animals have been in their yards, soiled their yards, jumped the fence, done
This
things
is a
like
standard
that.
size lot, right? It's not an extra large lot.
It's not an extra.
So how many square feet do you have per animal becomes a question. It's very crowded, it sounds like to
That's
me.
not a bad thought. Yeah.
That's not healthy either.
Right, so, anyway, substance for a committee assignment or two,
So
whenever
we just
you
refer to public
feel like
safety.
taking it up, yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
Make the motion to refer to public safety.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
So are we waiting for the petition or go ahead and meet and start discussing the current policy?
I think, go ahead and
Go ahead and meet.
just do some research. Yeah. So all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. We'll refer that to public safety.
Thank you.
Anything else, John?
No, that's enough for me.
Except for your party on Friday.
Well, I'm assuming you all got an email about that, but anyway, yeah, that's late afternoon into the evening. And,
So wear your green. I'm gonna have to put this jacket back on Friday.
it's supposed to be about 20 degrees out, so warm coffee with a little extra igniter in it will be just what you need. Okay.
Great. Okay, committee and board reports. Personnel?
All right. So we met earlier last week so that we could review the city administrator job description, which was in your reports tonight, and the current city administrator agreement so that we could look that over. And then just bring up to the most recent verbiage for the city code, chapter 2, that outlines the city administrator. What we did notice there is, as of the last writing, just the city clerk was mentioned, and so we added the city engineer and the new distribution of public works director duties underneath the engineer's purview as well. And then also, we were noting that we would like to see our up and coming administrator be at least having a working knowledge of Microsoft 360, as that's used quite frequently by all of our staff and others. And then the addition of the code enforcement officer, we needed to make a separate note on that. Other than that, there was just one simple little place talking about the bonding for the city administrator that we added unless otherwise assigned by council. And if there's anything else, I did notice that I did leave something off, and the mayor was speaking about that tonight. Our insurance company has asked that our city administrator attend more of the library board minutes, just having a better idea of what's going on there. The mayor is going to be stepping into that while we do not have a city administrator, as one of the things to keep an oversight here for the next 2 or 3 months. So anything else that you might
Any
have?
particular reason why library board as opposed to Say Park and Rec has a board also, but it's advisory as opposed to the.
Yeah,
Library being-
I guess they were just asking if we do that kind of thing and would we consider doing it. I probably because they were seeing enough track record at other board meetings and maybe asking about that particular one, so.
Well, I think when they take on personnel issues, they really need to bring in some experienced individuals before they take action.
Do you want to say anything else, Rebecca, about the day that we met with
I was
the
just,
lady on that?
yeah, she was concerned to make sure that the hiring process was going all right, and when they have some turnover, that they wanted to make sure that, I guess, that they understood the process they need to take to do the hiring, and thought maybe if a city person was there to help guide them if any questions arose from it. And sometimes there's been times when I've read the minutes too, that they've asked questions, and it would have been nice if someone from the city would have been there to be able to answer those.
Just concerning policy
Yeah.
and things.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's not something we necessarily do on a real regular basis, and so it would be convenient at those times.
Yes.
Okay, anything else? Otherwise,
Nope. Okay, Ways and Means? Doug?
I think everything that we covered in our minutes were already addressed by the council, so there's nothing to add.
Okay. Environmental and franchise.
Yes, we spoke and we met, earlier this evening to kind of get an update on the RIC initiative, where we're partnering with University of Northern Iowa on, we conducted an assessment earlier in the year, and we had previously approved $8,000 for the hiring of some volunteers who are going to be helping us kind of go through that assessment and working with UNI. And so we wanted to get an update on that. We did not hire any volunteers in September. Apparently there were some good candidates, but they chose to go to other communities. So we're going to be looking at hiring those volunteers again in September. The reason why we're doing it in September is because it's kind of tied to the academic school year, is my understanding. Yeah. And so if we hired some now, then they wouldn't have as long to serve the community as if they were hired in September. In September, they would be working for 11 months. So another issue that we talked about related to the RIC initiative is we were talking about considering some food waste assessment in partnership with UNI as part of the RIC initiative. Currently, we had discussed doing a greenhouse gas emissions assessment, but there have been some discussions among council members and the mayor and our sustainability coordinator who believe that actually it would be our time and the resources that you and I can contribute to this city would be best used focusing on food waste assessment. That's just something that we're considering. There's nothing that we're going to be bringing to council tonight to approve. Along those lines, there's a food waste solution event Thursday at the CoLab at 4 p.m. if anyone's interested in attending. Again, there's nothing for the council to take action on tonight.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, with that, I'll take a motion to, oh, Melanie, you got something? Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wanted to report on my meeting with Indian Hills regarding the lease at the Carnegie Museum. So I did meet with 3 representatives from Indian Hills last week. I was late for the meeting, so I gave them a tour of everything that Carnegie has done to improve things there, and so they had a really good meeting. And then we discussed their desires and the change to the lease. And so I'm working on getting that typed up, and then I will send it to the property committee for consideration, kind of what John had expected, that they're requesting a decrease in some of their responsibilities due to them not taking up the lower level They had been using more of it for storage, and it had been more of an equal share on the lower level, and now it's more Carnegie, and they're just basically using the bathroom. So I'll have all that typed up for the property committee to discuss. And then the other thing from the department head meeting that Connie was looking at me that I'm like, oh, I know there's something else, but I can't remember what it is the new rec center flooring, or the locker room flooring. We do not have a date yet for when that's going to be installed. That was what we were hoping that we would have by tonight, so that we could announce the dates that those are going to be closed. But we will get that out to the public as soon as that construction date is set. So that was what we were thinking about.
You know, I saw it on my list, and I decided not to say anything because I didn't have a date.
Yes,
So I thought,
and I was
maybe it doesn't
actually,
matter yet.
I was, as soon as like you looked at me, I was like, oh, and so I was texting Calvin real quick, and I got an answer. So
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Toohill. Second by Ham. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Abe?